Hey, welcome to The Explainer. You know, we live in a world that is just full of rules. But what if the whole point of those rules, what if the people making them are aiming for the wrong target? We're going to dive into a really powerful idea today that suggests maybe, just maybe, being perfect isn't just hard, it might actually be the wrong goal in the first place.
I mean, really think about that for a second. In your own life, at work, on some project you're pouring your heart into, is chasing that absolute 100% perfection always the smartest way to go?
Because what if getting that last tiny 1% costs you way more than it's actually worth? And what if, and this is the kind of mind-bending part, in some of the most critical, high-stakes situations you can imagine, good enough is actually better? Well, there's a theory of regulation that argues for exactly that. It suggests a much more efficient goal, something called substantial compliance. All right, so this whole idea of substantial compliance is the absolute heart of a regulatory model called Feen's theory. Let's really dig in and see how it works. So, Feen's theory, in a nutshell, is this. Instead of this old-school approach where every rule and every organization is treated exactly the same, what if we used data to zero in, to focus our limited time, our limited resources on the places where they're going to make the biggest difference? It's all about moving away from that rigid, one-size-fits-all way of thinking.
Okay, so what's the engine that actually drives this whole thing? Well, it's a key principle called differential monitoring. Now, I know, it sounds a little technical, but I promise you the idea behind it is super intuitive.
And probably the best way to get your head around it is to think about something from a totally different world. Think precision medicine. Except in this case, the patient isn't a person, it's a whole organization. And the illness? Well, that's risk.
And when you put them side by side, the parallel is, it's just wild. Look, with precision medicine, right, doctors use all this complex biological data, genomics, biomarkers, to find the exact target and then pick the perfect therapy. Well, differential monitoring does the exact same thing, but it uses performance and compliance data. It finds these key indicators of risk and then decides how much attention, how much monitoring is needed. See? Both of them are throwing out that old one-size-fits-all playbook. They tailor the action to the specific risk, making sure resources go where they'll do the most good.
Okay, so this all sounds really smart in theory, right? But you might be thinking, is this just some academic idea stuck in a textbook? Nope, not at all. This exact way of thinking is already being used out there in the real world, in some of our most critical industries.
Let's start with banking. I mean, think back to the 2008 financial crisis. After that whole mess, regulators had this huge realization. There's no way they can police every single transaction at every single bank. It's impossible. So instead, they had to focus on the big stuff, the systemic risks, the kind of things that could bring down the whole economy. And this is differential monitoring in action, a perfect real-world case. The massive, too-big-to-fail banks, they get way more intense, constant oversight than, say, a small community bank. And why? It's simple. The risk is just so much higher. Regulators are laser-focused on those do-no-harm rules, like making sure banks have enough capital to survive a shock. They're not sweating the small stuff. It's a totally pragmatic, data-driven approach that hones in on what really, truly matters.
And it's not just banking. We see this exact same pattern in places that affect our health every single day. Think about the EPA, the FDA. These huge agencies are using a very similar risk-based playbook to try and keep us all safe.
So, the EPA, for instance, uses advanced monitoring to target the industrial plants that pose the biggest pollution threats. The FDA has this incredible system called Predict that uses data to score and flag high-risk food coming into the country. But, and this is a really important but, there's a big difference here. Unlike in banking, these agencies can't just come out and say, hey, our goal is substantial compliance. Can you imagine? The public expects and demands absolute safety. So politically, it's just impossible for them to say they're aiming for anything less than 100%.
All right, so we've seen what the theory is. We've seen it in action. But let's get to the why. Why is this actually a more efficient way to do things? Well, the answer comes down to a really simple but incredibly powerful economic idea.
It's all about the law of diminishing returns. You know this instinctively. As you get closer and closer to that 100% perfect mark, the amount of effort, money, and resources you have to pour in just explodes. Meanwhile, the actual benefit you get from that extra effort starts to flatten out. It just plateaus.
And this chart right here just illustrates it perfectly. Look at the bar for getting to 90% compliance. It costs something, for sure. Now look at the jump to get to 99%. It's a lot bigger, right? But here's the kicker. That last single percent. Getting from 99 to 100, the cost goes through the roof. It's exponential. And all Fiend's theory is asking is a very simple question. Is it possible that all those resources we're burning to chase that last percent, could they be better spent somewhere else, preventing a much bigger problem from happening in the first place?
So, let's bring it all home. We've talked about everything from precision medicine to big banks to food safety. What's the one big idea you should walk away with?
At the end of the day, this is so much more than just some theory about regulations. It's a massive paradigm shift. It's about moving from that old, rigid, one-size-fits-all mentality to a much smarter, tailored, data-driven system that focuses on actual risk. It's really about being smart, not just being strict.
And this smarter, risk-based way of thinking is already quietly reshaping huge parts of our world. It's kind of this hidden force that's making things more efficient and, you could argue, even safer. So I'll leave you with this question. Now that you know how to spot this pattern, where else do you see it? And more importantly, where else could we and should we be applying it?